Sup, guys? 1-1 yesterday. Very small loss. Move on to today. I'm going to have a couple baseball plays. We do have hockey in action, Western Conference Finals. Not playing this game. I haven't played a hockey game since like the first games of these series, I don't think, but it is what it is. Dallas at Edmonton. This is game 6 back in Edmonton. Edmonton has taken the series lead again with, I think, 2 straight wins. Now up 3-2 in the series, so it is a closeout game now for Edmonton. They're up from -101 to -137 in this one. I don't think that they actually legitimately open at -101 because they've been around like -120 something favored in all their home games. -137 makes sense, but it is a little bit high for what Edmonton has been in the other home games in the series. They have 61% of the tickets on them, so they are a little bit public too, but they have 76% of the cash, so we do see money coming in on the Edmonton side, driving the number up. So I think that is legitimate money coming in on the Edmonton side. I actually agree with it. They're going to be pretty heavily motivated, I think, to just finish the series out right here. They do not want to have to go back to Dallas for game 7. Of course, Dallas is facing elimination, though, and are the underdog. But this is kind of similar to what I said last night with Florida. I think the odds makers are kind of telling you what you need to know. You can read the market, and it's kind of telling you what you need to know. These teams that have the ability to close it out in game 6 with the momentum after winning the prior game, I think, tend to be a decent play. It's a decent spot. So I do lean to the Edmonton side in agreement with the market in that one. Moving on to baseball. I have a couple of leans that I'm not going to quite do, but I do lean against Houston because I think Hunter Brown is just such a bad pitcher that I would lean to the Minnesota side there. That series is kind of zigzagged in the first 2 games. I won on Minnesota in the first game of the series. Houston in the return home spot wasn't a good spot, returning home from a road trip. They played poorly, and then in the second game, after a team comes back from a road trip, if they play poorly in the first game, it tends to be a much better spot for them in the second game, and they did win yesterday. But now Hunter Brown, he's just an awful pitcher. Minnesota has rookie Simeon Woods Richardson pitching, which he's definitely unproven. We don't know what we're going to really be getting out of him long term, but he's pitched pretty well so far. And maybe some of that has to do with the fact that he's facing hitters who have yet to see him. So he has a little bit of an advantage over them because he's not like the greatest strikeout pitcher or anything. But all that being said, I do think that Minnesota would be the correct side in that one. And they have 68% of the cash there with 64% of the tickets on them. So they have a little bit more of the cash, even though it looks like the line's moved up from Houston, -135 to -147. Brown, I think, has bad numbers against Minnesota, too. Richardson, never been seen before by Houston, so I think he has a little bit of the edge there. So I lean that way. I lean to the Tampa Bay side again, even though they got me yesterday. Tampa's now avoiding the sweep. Baltimore may get a little complacent after winning the first 2 games of the series, and they do have Toronto up next, which is kind of a big divisional matchup, maybe bigger than this one is against Tampa, and they've already won the first 2 games against Tampa. Of course, Baltimore very public, but they're down from -145 to -137, so there is reverse line movement on Baltimore, even though they have 83% of the tickets and 71% of the cash. So like all the market indicators are on the Tampa Bay side, where Baltimore's public. They have less of the cash than the tickets, and the line has moved against them. Tampa Bay has Zach Littell pitching, and he has been pretty good this season, actually, surprisingly good. His numbers are pretty good. His whip may be a little bit too high, but good strikeout numbers, strikeout walk numbers, and he has pretty good numbers against Baltimore, I think. So that looks like a decent side to me, although Baltimore has Cole Irvin pitching, even though I think he's the worst of the 2 pitchers as far as like strikeout ability, whatever. Looking at some of his other numbers, he does have pretty good numbers against this kind of weak Tampa offense too. So I don't quite see enough of an edge there to do it, but I do lean to Tampa. And then I also lean to Kansas City to avoid the sweep. They're up from -125 to -130 in this interleague series against San Diego after they've lost the first 2 games of the series. Kansas City, very public though. They have 84% of the tickets, but it looks like they have 92% of the cash, and the line has moved up on Kansas City. So the market indicators, even though Kansas City is public, it still looks like there's legitimate money coming in on the Kansas City side as well. So public and some professionals, I think, all on the Kansas City side there. I do generally agree with it because Kansas City's trying to avoid the sweep, although San Diego, I think their next series up is against the Anaheim Angels, so that's not really like a look ahead look ahead type of spot there. I don't think to be looking ahead really to that series. Kansas City, the team with the better record over Anaheim. Anaheim really not doing well this season, but it is still a sweep avoiding spot where you get a little bit of extra motivation out of those teams trying to avoid the sweep. And Cole Reagan's just a really good pitcher. And I think for the most part, Kansas City has never seen him before, or excuse me, San Diego has never seen him before. He's like Kansas City's ace, basically. And San Diego has virtually never seen him before. So I think that's good for Cole Reagan's. Michael King is pitching for San Diego, though, and he's also not a bad pitcher, really. He and Reagan's both have like really good strikeout numbers this year and stuff and haven't allowed that many hits. So they've both been pretty good, even though I prefer Reagan's a little bit in that one. It is a tough one to actually do because of the pitching matchup there. And I think King has good numbers against Kansas City historically as well and some limited playing time. I think I'd have to go look again, but I think that's the case. Could look to maybe play an under in that one, actually, with both pitchers looking pretty good in that matchup. We do see 67% of the tickets on the over, but 53% of the cash on the under, and the line moving from 8.5 juice to the under down to 8 juice to the under. So we do see some legitimate market indicators, I think, on the under in that one. And moving on to the two plays I actually have. Play number one is up. Both of these are in the earlier afternoon slate. I guess the 1:40 afternoon now. 1:40 Eastern. Yesterday, it seemed like all the games were at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm like, what is going on here? I don't even know what happens in the MLB anymore. I'm used to having action at 1 o'clock, but whatever. First game that I'm going to be on is going to be on the Arizona Diamondbacks against the New York Mets. This is a spot where I like it, except I'm going to be playing a first 5 inning bet here because I don't like the fact that Arizona used a lot of their bullpen yesterday. They used 4 of their relief pitchers yesterday, whereas the Mets only used 2. So I'm going to drop the bullpens from the equation here, even though I don't know. I don't even know which of these teams I would say actually even has the better bullpen, but this is mostly a play based on the starting pitching matchups. That's what I'm going to do here. Arizona had lost the first 2 games of the series and finally won one yesterday. That might give them a little bit of momentum, I guess, a little bit of confidence coming into this one. But this starting pitching matchup, I think, is one of the biggest mismatches on the board, man. So that's where I'm going with this one on Arizona. It looks like we do see some market movement going towards Arizona, so I like that too. That's on the full game action, but Arizona opened a plus 107 underdog, and now they flipped to minus 108. So they've flipped like to almost a favorite here, and they have 57% of the cash on them, 52% of the tickets on the other side on the Mets. So we do see some some strong market indicators on the Arizona side with the line flipping Arizona basically to the favorites. So we see some movement on the line towards Arizona. We see more of the cash coming in on Arizona, despite the fact that we see the higher percentage of the tickets on the other side. So it looks like reverse line movement. It's kind of weird that the Mets would be like as public as they are because Arizona won the National League last year, but both of these teams have bad records this year, although Arizona's is slightly better than the Mets. So it's a little bit weird to see that the Mets are slightly public here. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's just because they are the Mets. They're a New York team. They're a bigger market team, so maybe that's why. But starting pitching-wise, Brandon Pfaadt is pitching for Arizona. Brandon Pfaadt. I was calling him the fat man, the fat boy during the playoffs last year, even though he is certainly not fat, unless it's P-H-A-T, because he's pretty good. He seems to be starting to, like, get it together as far as his career is concerned. Last year was his first season, and he struggled at times for sure, but his strikeout numbers were always pretty good throughout last year, but he was getting hit quite a bit and maybe walking a few too many guys. This year, he's started to tone that down a little bit, and even though he has a 4.16 ERA this year, so that doesn't look great, 1.07 whip is good. And that indicates that his ERA should probably be lower than it is. He's got 63 strikeouts and 67 innings pitched so far, and only 12 walks allowed, 60 hits allowed. So his numbers are pretty good there. He's not allowing that many base runners. Pretty good strikeout rate, not bad. So all of that looks pretty good, man. So he's off to a pretty good season here, even though, like I said, his ERA is not that good, but his ERA is kind of skewed a little bit as well. He allowed 5 and 6 earned runs in 2 starts back on April 6th to the Braves, but can you really blame him for that? And then to the Cardinals coming off that Braves game. So I don't know what we could take away from that. And if you exclude those 2 games, he has not allowed more than 4 earned runs in any other start this season. That was a game at Texas, his most recent game, where he still had a 5-1 strikeout walk ratio on that one. So it was still a pretty good outing for him. And if you take that one out of the equation, all the rest of his starts, he's allowed 3 earned runs or fewer. So that's looking pretty good, man. And in the majority of them, he's allowed 2 or 1 earned run. So he has been pretty decent over the whole season here. Pretty good, man. And the Mets have almost never seen him before. Only JD Martinez and Tyrone Taylor have seen him before. Taylor has the only hit off of him. They're 1 for 3 off him. Although that one hit is a 2-run homer, it looks like, from Taylor. But other than that, the rest of the Mets lineup has never even faced him before. And Martinez does have 1 strikeout against him in those 2 at-bats. So Fott basically is going to be unfamiliar to the majority of the Mets lineup here. So I think that's an edge to Fott. He's the better, younger pitcher in this matchup, the way younger pitcher in this matchup, and unfamiliar to these opposing hitters. So these opposing hitters might struggle a little bit against him. Whereas on the other side, you got Jose Quintana, and you know that I've gone against him repeatedly this year, man, and for good reason. I think he's definitely on the backside of his career. He's 35 now, whereas Fott, I think, is like 26, somewhere in that range. Quintana, he's nearing the end of his career, man, and he's not pitching well this season. He's got a 5.06 ERA, 1.36 whip. He's never really been a dominant pitcher, not a guy that comes in and strikes you out, but his stats have not been very good this year. He's been struggling a bit. He's given up 62 hits and 18 walks in 58 2/3 innings. That's not great with only 39 strikeouts. So he's not coming in and blowing people away. He's been pretty mediocre throughout the last month or so, even though he does have a 16.3 strikeout walk ratio over that span. That's in 25 innings where he's also allowed 32 hits, 6 home runs, and he's been kind of beaten up, and he's allowed at least 3 earned runs in every one of those starts, except for the one against Philadelphia, which is weird. Maybe he got pumped up for that divisional matchup, but overall, he's been struggling, hasn't been that great. He's only got at least 6 innings in 3 of his starts this season out of however many starts, a lot of starts. So he hasn't been going that deep into these starts anymore. And against these Arizona hitters, his numbers are not good. They're 32 for 93 off him lifetime. So we have a good sample size to look at here. 4 doubles, 2 home runs, 13 RBIs, a 19-10 strikeout walk ratio. So a ton of walks. That's a 344 batting average and 859 OPS. So these Diamondbacks hitters have been able to hit Quintana, and they've drawn a lot of walks off him as well. So he has struggled against them. So I think this is a pitching mismatch. I'm making it a first 5-inning bet, and I think the best value in playing this is actually to lay the run line on it. Lay Arizona minus a half run in the first 5 innings. You can get it at plus 110. The money line in this game, the odds makers are actually kind of telling you that the first 5-inning play, Arizona is actually the stronger favorite. Yeah, trying to get my camera to focus again. I hate that. If you look at this, the odds makers have Arizona lined at as low as minus 112 on the game, but in the first 5 innings, they have them at minus 125. So the odds makers are telling you that the starting pitching matchup is a stronger edge in this game for Arizona than the full game is, than like including the bullpens and whatever. So I am doing that. I don't mind playing it on the money line, the minus 125, because if you do that, of course, you are also getting the scenario where if it's tied through the first 5 innings, you'll push. So you are getting that. But I think I like playing the spread better here because you can get it basically at even money there, or better than even money. So you can lay Arizona minus half a run in the first 5 innings at plus 110, and hopefully they get through the first 5 innings with the lead here. I think they do have a significant starting pitching edge here, so hopefully they're able to do that and get there. And then the other game I'm going to be on is a full game play on a side, which is going to be on the Washington Nationals. I think this is a good spot, man, to play the Nationals here. And you can get them at plus 130 right now as an underdog price, which is not bad. It looks like it's down to plus 128 now. The line keeps moving in Washington's direction, which is good. I think straight up money line play is a fine way to play this one. Cleveland kind of in like the minus 140s range, money line wise, minus 150s. So you can get like a decent underdog price on Washington, but I would not want to go as far as like laying minus 160, whatever, to play them plus 1.5 run line on it. I think the money line is fine. Just grab them as the underdog and hope that they win the game outright. I think they have a decent chance to win the game outright, and they're not being given as much of a chance as they should be. I think this is a mismatch and a situational edge for Washington. Cleveland looks like they've gone up from minus 135 to minus 146, so that worries me a little bit that the line has moved up on Cleveland, but it looks like the other market indicators are on the Washington side with 55% of the tickets on Washington, which is odd to me. I don't know why Washington would actually have the majority of the tickets, like how they would even be slightly public here. I don't know, because Cleveland is playing really well so far this season. They're leading their division, the AL Central. They have a really good record, better than Washington. So it's weird to even see 55% of the tickets on Washington. I don't even know if I buy that. Washington has the far worse record, below 500. Cleveland well above 500. And however, Washington does have 70% of the cash on them. So it does look like there is some legitimate money coming in on Washington. And I think we see some take back at some of these higher numbers on Cleveland here. I think we see the line kind of moving a little bit back in the direction of Washington here. We do see the market percentages here do look like there's way more of the cash than the tickets on Washington. And I agree with it for a number of reasons. Cleveland is on the verge of the sweep, but it's like, how much are they going to really pay attention to trying to sweep the Washington Nationals? I don't know. They might get a little complacent because Cleveland's obviously the better team. They have the better record. They won the first 2 games here. And coming up next, they're going to have a series against Kansas City, which is a big divisional series, man, against a Kansas City team that's kind of right behind them in the standings, although 5 games behind them. That's still a big divisional matchup, man, between the top 2 teams record-wise in the division right now. So Cleveland might have a little bit of a look-ahead scenario there. And coming off yesterday's game, Cleveland had to use some of their better relievers to hold off Washington in yesterday's game. So Cleveland's bullpen situation is actually worse than Washington's is now, I would say. Washington only has 2 of their relievers yesterday in relief of Mitchell Parker, one of their young arms there for Washington, while Cleveland had to hold off Washington in a close 3-2 win. Cleveland used 4 of their best relievers yesterday, including Clace, their closer, a couple of their better hold men, Barlow and Gaddis. So Cleveland used 2 more relievers than Washington did. So I think the bullpen rest situation is in favor of Washington, and the situation is because Cleveland might just overlook Washington a little bit, like I said, after taking the first 2 games of the series and having a big divisional series up next, whereas Washington's going to be, I think, focused to try to get a win here, man. And it is possible Washington came into this series maybe a little bit high on themselves because they just won a series against the Braves, winning 3 out of 4. That was a huge series for Washington. So maybe they came into this series against Cleveland in a little bit of letdown mode. But now that they've lost the first 2 games of the series, you might see some focus out of Washington again here to try to salvage the last game of the series. So I like all of that. And then we look at the starting pitching matchup, man. I think this is not very good for Cleveland. Washington has Jake Irvin pitching, and I don't love him, but he hasn't been bad this year with a 3.43 ERA, 1.03 whip. There's nothing to really dislike about those numbers. He's got a 54-11 strikeout walk ratio, so that shows some good command, man. And 28-4 in the month of May, that's not bad either. So he's definitely in command of his pitches. He's not walking that many guys. He's striking out a lot more than he's walking, although his strikeout rate isn't that high. He's not like a dominant strikeout pitcher. That's in 63 innings pitched over the season. So fewer than 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, but still. So the strikeout walk numbers aren't bad. And he's only allowed 54 hits across the season over those 63 innings. So he hasn't been that easily hittable. And if you take out that one really bad start that he had where he gave up 12 hits and 6 earned runs and 4 2/3 against a really difficult Dodgers lineup, and it was a bad spot for him because he had just faced the Dodgers in the game prior to that and did a lot better. So I think the Dodgers were ready for him the second time, and they'd just seen him, so they knew what to expect. So that game, I think you can actually put an asterisk next to that one and maybe throw that one out a little bit. So if you take out that one, which is his worst start of the season, his stats don't look bad this season, man. He's allowed 4 or fewer earned runs in all the rest of the starts, and both games where he allowed 4 were actually against the Philadelphia Phillies, and they have a pretty good lineup too. And you can't even really knock him for allowing 4 runs to the Phillies. That's not even that bad, really. And then if you take those games out, against the rest of these teams, he's allowed 3 earned runs or fewer, and he only allowed 3 in that first game of the season against Cincinnati. So maybe opening day, a little bit of nervousness. Who knows? It wasn't even a horrible start from there. You take that one out, and in the rest of his starts, he's only allowed 2 or fewer earned runs, and that's been in 7 of his starts this season, so more than half of them. So pretty good overall numbers, man, for Jake Irvin. And then to put the cherry on top a little bit, Cleveland has never faced him before. So I think that gives him a little bit of an edge too. He's still kind of a young guy, 27 years old. This is only his second season in the majors, and he's improving off of his first season where he wasn't that great in his first season. His walk numbers were really bad last year, and his strikeout numbers not that great, not that high. He had a really high whip last year, but this year he's pitching a lot better than he did last year. So I like that. Maybe he's getting used to it, improving a little bit, and might have an edge over these Cleveland hitters a little bit here just because Cleveland has not faced him before. So they might not be ready for what he's about to throw at them in the early going. Meanwhile, on the other side, Cleveland has Carlos Carrasco pitching. He's an old guy, man. He's 37. He's nearing the end of his career. So I'm going against Quintana and Carrasco. And I think that they're both kind of similar in ways, or they're both these old pitchers that don't really strike out a lot of guys, kind of throw some junk, getting towards the end of their career. So kind of a lot of similarities there. And I'm going against both of them today. Carrasco is coming off the DL here. So I do tend to actually like pitchers that are coming off the DL because I think they get a little bit shortchanged. But in this matchup, I don't think so, man. I don't think we're really getting value on Cleveland here in this one because Cleveland's a team with a way better record and they won the first 2 games of the series. Even though Carrasco, not a very good pitcher, the fact that he's coming off the DL, I don't think is factoring into the line very much here. And yeah, I mean, he's coming off the DL, so he'll probably be ready and people might not expect him to be ready. So yeah, there is that aspect of it. He'll probably be ready to go, but he just hasn't been good this season, man. He's got a 5.16 ERA, 1.46 whip. None of that is good. 34 strikeouts and 18 walks and 48 hits allowed in 45 and third innings. That's way too many walks. He's putting way too many men on base. Not a good strikeout rate either. And yeah, a lot of it came in a bad start against Boston after he had just faced Boston the game before that. He didn't do that well in either game against Boston, really. And then he had a bad game against Houston, which was his worst start of the season. So Houston has a good lineup. Yeah, sure, fine. I could see those arguments being made. But again, just overall this season, he really hasn't been that great. And like I said, he's not a very good strikeout pitcher. He's nearing the end of his career. So I'd much rather be on the younger pitcher who hasn't been seen before. Whereas speaking of having been seen before, Washington's offense has seen Carrasco a lot, of course, because Carrasco has been around for a long time. And he's actually been in Washington's division recently. He was, speaking of Quintana and Carrasco having similarities, Carrasco was actually on the Mets for the last 3 seasons. And now he's back to the other team that he was on for most of his career. Cleveland brought him back, I think maybe so that he can retire as a Cleveland Indian. Hey, they were the Indians back when they first had them, all right? I refuse to call them by their new stupid name. They're always the Indians, man. But these Washington Nationals hitters, they've seen them a lot recently, and we have a huge sample size here. Washington's hitters are 36 for 104 off in lifetime, 7 doubles, 7 home runs, 21 RBIs, a 24-9 strikeout walk ratio. Still kind of a lot of walks. And it all amounts to a 346 batting average and 1,014 OPS. So these Washington hitters have seen him plenty, and they've been able to hit him pretty well and get on base on him a lot. So off of him a lot. So he hasn't been good against Washington. So I like all of that, man. So the 2 plays today, after I gave you all those leans and stuff too, all of these opinions, these boil down to what I think are the 2 strongest plays. The Arizona Diamondbacks first 5 innings, minus half a run on the run line. Hopefully they get there and have a 1-run lead at that point after that and can get that at plus 110. And then the Washington Nationals plus 130, just full game money line. Let's do it. Happy Sunday. Let's get it done, man. Peace.